on a prayer book. Okay. So we'll start with the Heart Sutra on page 8. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagawan was dwelling on Masavolti's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said to the Venerable Shariputra, Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly, beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifestly, completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Patasam Gate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagawan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice a profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagawan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagawan. I prostrate to the gathering of the Dakinis in the 3 chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space. By your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation, look after practitioners like a mother her child. Apasamara Satchadara Samara Yape Tayata Gate Gate Padagate Padasamgate Bodhi Soham. By the teachings of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified, may they be completely pacified. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma, and may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here right now. Page 15, Mandala Offering. Sashi Bhogi Shushin Meto Tramarira Adlingshi Nihidegyen Adi Sangi Jinu Migdeo Hidro Namada Jin La Chupashu Jetsun Lahama Lamparkinam Ichukala Yen Se Chuzin Tri Jita Zampe No Chejima La Samgechedi Chapatu Solidam Guranam Mandalakam Nivayatayami Sangye Chidan Sagi Chonam La Jangchu Badu Dabni Kapsuchi Dagi Chinyen Gi Pesunam Pi Drolam Panche Sangye Jupa Sho Sangye Chidan Sagi Chonam La Jangchu Badu Dabni Kapsuchi Dagi Chinyen Gi Pesunam Pi Drola Panche Sangye Jupa Sho Sangye Chidan Sagi Chonam La Janchu Badu Dabni Kapsuchi Dagi Chunyen Gi Pesunam Ki Trola Panchi Sange Drupashu. So setting a most profound Mahayana motivation for engaging in listening, reflecting on, meditating on these profound mind training teachings passed on originally in secret to those whose minds prepared, and the great fortune that Geshe Chakwa made these accessible to all in the world, taught the lepers, became the leopard Dharma, and then spread throughout the world to help us to, of course, all the teachings of the Buddha being mind training, but particularly in these more advanced techniques of being really able to turn the mind around 180 degrees from self-cherishing to cherishing all other beings without exception, doing our best. Just like in the refuge and bodhicitta prayer, to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings is our aspirational prayer. And having the great fortune being here together to cultivate these minds, to learn how to cultivate these minds, is incredibly courageous. Okay. So what happened?
She's getting there's already a meeting going. I've got her address, but I wouldn't know how to send her an invite to let her in. This wasn't closed down after yesterday. It was saying there was still a meeting in progress.
Oh.
So, have you got any idea best way to manage? Can we send her an invite somehow? Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Not from here. It would have to be just on the email. On the email sent to her. The link.
Yeah, I mean, I could do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't I can't help her on my computer because I've got that all set up.
Yeah.
All right. I'll
Okay. Meantime, okay. So if we could go back, anyway, I'll go back one or two. Okay, I'm just going back to recap a little bit from last week. So here we are in the 7-point mind training, and the second point of the mind training. So just doing your best. Feel free to ask any questions at any time. So I'm going back to this quote from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, transforming problems into happiness. So this transforming problems into happiness is a commentary by Lama Zopa Rinpoche on another text. Here we're looking at Geshe Chökyi's 7-point mind training, but another text which Rinpoche recommends as a daily practice of transforming. I've got it here, the title here, at the beginning of here. The method to transform a suffering life into happiness, including enlightenment. You know, so Rinpoche says in that, no matter, so I'm on 41. I'm on slide 41, I'm just sort of recapping a bit. No matter how hard you strive towards happiness in your everyday life, you simply cannot experience it. You cannot experience that happiness unless you develop a good, compassionate heart. So here we were talking previously about that one develops compassion on the basis of a mind of equanimity, of even regard towards all beings. Not that we're all the same, of course, we're all different, but that, as His Holiness says, as humans, physically, mentally, emotionally, we're all the same. The differences of culture, the difference of language, the difference of belief systems, the difference of socioeconomic status, the difference of culture, geographic difference, whatever, are all secondary things. What we hold common is that we're the same in none of us want to suffer. We can see that with animals, we can see that with humans, pretty clear. And we all want to be happy. However, as Rinpoche says, you cannot experience that happiness unless you develop a good, compassionate heart. In other words, not talking about temporary happiness of ice cream or the sunshine or whatever, but an enduring happiness that only ever grows and grows, because compassion is innate to us. As Charles Darwin said, we're hardwired for compassion, can't help it. And so we have, you know, on the basis of seeing all beings not wanting to suffer and seeing that they do suffer, ourselves included, developing this compassionate heart of, you know, sort of this heart of compassion, wishing for ourselves and others to be free of suffering. So we have different levels of compassion in society. We might have compassion, say, I'll have compassion for those in my family, my friends, my Dharma friends, you know, my tribe. But then having a compassion like for, okay, I can extend that out to my species, and all mammals you can see, not only to our own species, but seem to be able to extend that out to other species. We see that with, you know, the cute little videos I used to get with, you know, cats, or looking after other baby mammals, and dogs looking after. I've heard the dogs looking after cats, and then the cat thinks they're a dog. because that's the behavior they've learned to that. All of that, right? So all of that development, I was reading one of the news feed things this morning about the guy who was given the job of looking after this little baby gorilla, you might have seen, and then it was only for 1 year, it was all planned out, and then how they reintroduce, the mother had rejected this baby because he had maybe jaundice and pneumonia, and he was fighting for his life. And so this guy was the carer for a year, and then reintroducing back to the gorilla family, and another female who came and approached him and took him on. So of course we have that sort of compassionate heart. We have compassion when there's a crisis, when there's all the bushfires or the wildfires now going on in Canada, and we're sending more and more firefighters, and when we had the Black Summer, people were sending money, volunteering and everything. We have that sort of crisis compassion, but it's developing it. So it really becomes not dependent on it's someone I'm related to or not dependent on, oh, it's an Australian, or not dependent on, oh, it's a crisis, but just equal regard for all, wishing all to be free of suffering, no matter whether we like them or not. There might be the snakes and the cockroaches. We don't really, when we're meditating on compassion, probably don't think of those, do we? But it's a way to develop.
We should be able to just.
Oh, there. You.
Oh,
it's not recording the pictures, it only records the sound.
excellent.
Okay, without a good heart, you will never have peace in your life. This is what Rinpoche says. So without that good heart, without that heart of compassion, we never have peace in our life. So years ago, there was a happiness project, which, forgetting the woman who did the research project, and it was a film. Sorry, it started with a T. Might be Tanya.
Cover conferences.
Oh, the Happiness and Its Causes conference, but this was even before. As an American woman, and what she did was she took looking at school children and what gave them a sense of meaning in life, and all of it was about being of benefit to others. So they eventually, they also got to meet with the Dalai Lama and so forth. But it was, you could see from these teenagers that what gave them meaning and a sense of purpose and a sense of joy was being able to help communities in distress, generally, So we have that. We identify with that. When I help somebody else, I feel better. And so this is part of this training. We benefit. It says without a good heart. So we can say with a good heart, you will have peace in your life. So that we benefit from that. And hopefully they benefit as well. Okay. So I'll just read from the commentary. Yes.
A little bit chicken and egg here about developing that connection and the diminishment of the self, self-cherishment.
Well, yeah, it's a two-way street, like chicken, egg, don't know, but that changing our orientation to others is what this training is all about. Instead of focusing on our self and grasping at this self and looking after number one, of course we've got to look after ourselves. We can't be a benefit to others if we don't look after ourselves. Like when I ordained and I came back to my centre in Sydney, and this monk said, because it was winter, it was really cold, he said, you've got to look after yourself. There's no point getting sick. Then you can't benefit others. So he said, you stay in your room and I'll bring you meals. Someone did that for me. Stay in your room for a week, but I couldn't because I had commitments to do. But it was very sort of thing of we have to self-nurture, but not on a basis of a mind that is just caring for ourselves. It's like, I got to look after myself so I can look after others. You know, we put on our own face masks first, you know, as they say in the plains, put your own first and then help others. Yeah. So it's sort of, they're linked, you know, quite strongly. So if we straight away go, oh, I'm just going to benefit others at the expense of ourselves, that's when we get what is, you know, compassion burnout. People talk about compassion burnout because they haven't done the self-care part. They've done the, oh, I better just at the expense of myself. And that's not sustainable, as we know. Okay, so just quoting in relation to this from Shantideva. Shantideva says, he who wishes to quickly rescue both himself and others should practice the secret instruction. So we started talking about this last time, the exchanging of self and others. So that changing the exchange of self and others is literally turning that orientation from, you know, it's all about me to it's all about everybody. I'm only one of the 8 billion humans, let alone all the other species alive. So if you do not thoroughly exchange your own happiness with others' happiness, and we'll look at what that means, you will not become a Buddha even in samsara. In other words, in the world we experience, there will be happiness. I think it should be, there will be no happiness. It doesn't make sense. Hence, to assuage your own injuries, your own suffering, problems, difficulties, and to pacify others' suffering, you should give your own self to others and protect others as you would yourself. So just as, you know, we know, you know, if somebody says, I've got cancer, I've got back pain, I've got this and that. If you've had that, you know exactly, you know, the sorts of minds that might arise, the fears that might arise, let alone the pain that might arise. If you haven't had that, nonetheless, we know it's a suffering, and we have compassion for those people, don't we? Just naturally. So like that. Just let me check. I'll go back. So I'm still on 41, actually. I think we can go to 42. Yeah. So this is in the slides. This is what we're referring to, the slides. I think you had a marking anyway. I don't think I skipped all that. We did all that. Here we go. This is it. So this is the actual practice, how to bring this about, how to bring about, you know, we were talking about the mind of compassion, of love and kindness and so forth, and extending that out from our dear loved ones to others. And this is a pretty confronting first step. Banish the one to blame for everything. So the one to blame for everything is this self-grasping mind, this self-cherishing mind that causes all our problems, all our difficulties, while at the same time we're thinking, oh, it's their fault, they did this, they did that. So this is the first point that we train in is this one. And just to refer to it's one of my points here. Yeah. To say Chibul's commentary. So say Chibul was a direct student of Geshe Chökyi, who composed this text. And so he was the first to give commentary on the text directly. So we have different ways that this text presented, and I referred to a few different in texts. I'll be referring to a few different ones this morning. So banish the one to blame for everything, or put all blame on the one, and we point here to the self-cherishing mind. So it's asking us to perceive ourselves as our own worst enemy. We say that, don't we? I'm my own worst enemy. I cause myself all these difficulties and problems. And that's exactly what's being said. So without blaming others, thinking it's due to my own afflicted states of mind, my own self-grasping, my own deluded states of mind. And so it says in the Bodhisattva's way of life, whatever harms exist in the world, whatever dangers and sufferings are in the world, all arise from grasping at self. If there is self, recognition of others arise. So what we do is, oh, it's me and the rest of the world. Me versus the rest of the world sometimes. So we do that, and on that basis, we grasp at protecting me and anger towards others, or jealousy or pride or whatever's going on. And so because of all these emotional responses to out there, we suffer, and then all the difficulties come about.
So grasping, you said grasping.
Yes.
Yeah. So that grasping self is also related to that, perhaps, like there's some sort of wisdom, like we're talking about before, to look after yourself, so you can.
Yeah, there's a sensibility of looking after yourself.
So if it's aggressive next to that.
Sorry?
If it's an aggressive next door neighbor, or an aggressive family member,
or aggressive anybody,
leader, then our position is not to give up the self and rush in and
no,
out.
No, we've got to use our wisdom that says, what do I have the power to do? Like those of us who've taken bodhisattva vows, we have a commitment to where possible to stop others creating harm, like the aggressive neighbor or the this or the that or whatever. But at the same time, we can't chuck out our wisdom of saying, hang on a minute, what am I actually capable of doing?
And is that then related to like the wisdom, like in the Eightfold Path, right into
all of that,
And then that position around, even if I can't practically think about the same place. I can, that's in my heart. My heart goes out
to the whales who are suffering, and and say, may they be free of their suffering.
And there's no limit to that.
It's unlimited. So, for example, take the example of Thubten, because it's very hard to feel compassion. This is like the tough end of our compassion, doing such great harm in the world. But if you think that, where does that harm come from? Just the same as for ourselves, a deluded mind, a crazy mind, an unhinged, let's go on, maybe not, but the wish that they be free of that suffering, right? Because if they were free of that suffering, from a mind of peace, a mind, a stable, peaceful mind cannot do harm. It just isn't in the mental continuum to do. So then you think, may they have peace, may they experience even all the happiness I have, and this is part of this practice, giving to them. Of course, we're again the ones that benefit because it's our act of generosity and compassion and concern. We benefit. Is it going to change Thubten? Maybe not. Is it going to actually change your environment? Yes. And how you experience that? Yes.
And sort of also relinquishing the need to have like an perspective.
Exactly. We can rant and rave.
Their observation.
Yeah. I mean, we can get caught up in that ranting and raving, can't we?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, do we feel good? I mean, we might feel good about having ranted and raved, but do we feel good? No. Whereas if you think, I'm doing my contribution to world peace, you know, this is my contribution to world peace. And so, for example, in our organisation of PMT, the organisation for the monks and nuns of FPMT, we have on Saturdays, we have this prayer-a-thon that used to go for 24 hours. Now it's reduced because it's been a few years now. Not so many participants, you know, over that long period of time. Yes, even for monks and nuns. And so it's prayers, it's called, Lamas called it prayers according to the times. So originally we started to pacify the impact of the pandemic, right? And Rinpoche said until the pandemic goes down, and then the whole Ukraine war started playing out, and then it was, you know, we've said prayers for the mind of Thubten to change, and all involved in the conflict and so forth, but particularly that. And the prayers are those in accordance with that in terms of pacifying conflict, war, and so forth. And even not at that level, we can think, how much can I pacify the war in myself? How much can I pacify that in my own family? How, you know, we look at what we're capable of doing, but our intention is that, like you said, the Eightfold Noble Path, in having the right intention, right speech, right action of what we can do. And the more we use that, the more our capabilities for that grow. And we get better at it because our mind familiarizes with that, and instead of going towards a negative, it goes more towards a positive because we train it, but we've got to train it because we've got, you know, lifetimes of the negative. Yes. That's what Geshe Sultram does at 26 years. And so one way, as of training, is another verse, recognizing myself as flawed. This is not to beat ourselves up. It's just saying, I'm not perfect, right? Yeah, I make mistakes. I think, you know, in all these deluded ways and so forth. So recognizing that, and others as an ocean of higher qualities, what we can think of, that others, maybe especially those who do harm, are an ocean of higher qualities for myself, to train in ethics, to train in concentration, to train in compassion, to train in loving kindness towards those. So, you know, of course we can look at the fact that, you know, others such as that also have positive qualities that really nobody wants to have a disturbed state of mind. I can't go as far as to say nobody wants to be a killing machine because, you know, I was just reading about the mass murderer this morning, and I was just like, what do you call himself? Bind, torture and kill, BTK. Bind, torture, kill. That's a very disturbed mind. It's not a happy mind.
It could be a disturbed mind in being on the blind for everything. I'm looking into mental health.
Yes. Oh gosh, yeah. And that's the thing.
You can get inflation.
Yes, you can. You can take on things you're not responsible for, exactly. And this is why these trainings were passed on in secret, because it's not for people like that who are beating themselves up anyway. You wouldn't introduce this to someone who could easily take on and this is why it's in the, you know, it's in the great scope. You've got to have the foundation already to be able to take on these. It's like jumping into the deep end of the pool and you can't even swim, you know. That there's a time and place for these trainings, and it was indeed why they were passed on so secretly originally. So it says, I will thoroughly discard grasping at self. So this is, again, the distinction between, we're not chucking out our sense of self. We've got to have a solid, stable sense of self for this. And to like the Dalai Lama says, if you're going to be selfish, be wisely selfish, right? So that it's what we were saying before, we have to use our wisdom. We have to have a strong sense of self, strong sense of resilience and so forth to be able to engage in these practices. Otherwise, we will be like Leslie's, example, of really floundering and getting caught up in guilt. Yeah. Guilt does not help. And practice embracing others. So it doesn't mean go around hugging everybody, but, bringing others into our awareness and being aware of what they're going through, so that when I'm in conversation with someone else, of actually focusing on them rather than, oh, what am I going to say next? That's going to be really clever, or, whatever. That's going to be whatever. But actually focusing on the other person and being present. And then Chökyi says, reflect from beginningless time I've held on to a self where there was none. So again, we have to say, yes, I'm here, we're all here, we exist. But it's saying the self that I've got an image of in my mind doesn't exist anywhere. It's a story I've made up. And that story will change over time. It's a different story I told myself when I was a 7-year-old to what I tell myself, myself, I hope there's only one now, maybe there's many selves. And to realize that self that I hold is a permanent image of me. There's no permanent thing. There's only an ever-changing me, thankfully, because that means I can change for the good. So he says, wherever I was born, though there was no self, I grasped as my body as the basis of myself, my sense of self on the basis of my body. Now, if you hold on to that sense of the body as being me, and we do, we see somebody walking along, we recognize the form of their body and say, oh, that's Leslie or whatever. Because we know them, or that's a female, that's a male, that's a dog, that's a cat. And so we have those images to be able to relate, of course. But if I'm all about my body, what's going to happen at the time of death? I'm going to be really, really grasping at this body, because that's me going out of existence if I think me is the body. You see what I mean? It may also be the case if, I don't know, if people, I was just thinking if people have part of their body amputated. It's interesting, my brother-in-law, when he retired, he was going to go around Australia, and then he was diagnosed with cancer and he wasn't going around Australia anymore. And then he spent next 5 years in intensive cancer treatment. Don't need to go into the details, but at one point they said, oh, we might have to amputate your leg. And he said, fine. And I think, you just got to think, how would that be for me? How attached would I be to that? But I guess when you're faced that situation and it's life or death, take the leg. I want to stay alive. So, yeah. But we can look at that. So, again, in the commentary, it says, as long as I fail to view this self as the enemy, sounds awful, doesn't it? But which bit of the self are we talking about as the enemy? The mind that grasps at having this permanent, unchanging self. I mean, who would want that anyway? The mind that's deluded, that puts all the blame out there, etc. So as long as we do that, we keep collecting negative karma, we keep engaging in unethical actions, words. So this is why we can have compassion for those who send armies to kill not only do you have the karma of killing yourself, you didn't do the actual physical killing, but you've got the karma of killing all those beings, plus the karma of getting others to kill. So it's like double whammy. And you keep doing that. How with many others, it multiplies your negative karma of killing. And so we can have compassion on that level, thinking they have no idea the negative karma they're creating for themselves. It doesn't sort of, in my mind, wash in relation to the number of people killed and the number of lives destroyed and cities destroyed and things like that, the greed and all of that. But at least we can start to cultivate that mind of imagine the suffering they're going to have in future lives. Of course, to do that, we have to posit future lives. And regardless of whether someone believes in that or not, they're still going to experience the sufferings of that, which would be creating the causes for yourself to be killed many, 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 many times, because karma multiplies that many times to be killed, or to continue on that tendency to kill, in which case you can't stop killing, in which case more and more negative karma, a lot of hot hells experiences, which are unbearable suffering. And if we think like that, at least we can use that to refrain ourselves from similar minds, similar intentions, negative intentions. So Chökyi says, since this self has been my own executioner, my enemy from beginningless time, then in all the deaths I've experienced in the beginningless cycle of existence, no one else has done the killing. Rather, I have been killed by my own self, as if biting your lower lip firmly holds your own self as your enemy. I practice biting my lower lip and said, I'm not quite sure why you're biting your lower lip. So you don't say anything negative, I guess. I think so. So seeing that my true enemy is my own self-grasping, self-cherishing, and you can see I'm pointing here. So they say, is your own heart, not your physical heart, but our own self-grasping mind, chitta. Okay, so more can be said about banish the one to blame for everything. And more is said, like the Bonko Rinpoche, liberation in the palm of your hand, and mind training like the rays of the sun, which is from Nunca Pell's commentary on this same teaching. He was a direct student of Lama Tsongkhapa, and Lama Tsongkhapa praised him for his faith and his wisdom, his intellect actually, and he ended up translating a lot of the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa. Okay, maybe we can move on to the next one.
Can I just ask, considering yourself an enemy, like we're still doing that with compassion?
Still doing that with compassion. We're not beating ourselves up, but it's stopping to, so it's to turn our orientation away from blaming others and saying, oh, I caused this. I caused my anger. Like they didn't cause my anger, I did. And so you do it with compassion and saying, okay, if I'm angry, one way to diminish that affliction is turn your anger towards your anger. And so if I'm going to get angry at something, get angry at the anger. Of course, on the other hand, what's the real antidote? Would be having loving, caring concern for ourselves is the real antidote to that. And, so when we talk about perfection of that loving, caring concern, what we're talking about is having patience with ourselves in our practice. Okay, I haven't given up anger. There's still things that irritate me, but at least I'm not doing road rage anymore. Or, get be passionate.
And at least you can see them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we rejoice that we see that. I never saw it before.
Yeah.
And now I can see it. Like I worked on a project, way before I was ordained in schools, and it had nothing to do with any spiritual path. It was actually anti-racism and then an anti-bullying program that we were connected with. And it was peer education for kids. We started with year 11, year 12, stressed out with exams. So we started with year 11, and then they trained year 9, and year 10 trained year 8, and so forth, went down to grade 3. And it was about how quickly you can recognize that anger arising in your mind. And we talked about 3 stages: when it was like dormant, when it was latent, when it was emerging, and when it was manifest. Manifest is the kick and punch in the playground. Emerging is that you can feel it coming to that point. When it's latent, it's just this really very subtle, maybe slight frustration or irritation, and you can feel those thoughts in your mind. You can feel the tightening of your, literally feel tightening, narrowing mind. And that's when you have most power to do something about it. You can say, like, drop it. By the time you got to the kick and punch, it's too late. And so being able to recognize as early as possible, we did that through that particular training was through using drama. It was within the context of drama programs, so using theatre techniques and fun ways of being able to become more aware. More recently, doing the Paul Ekman and Alan Wallace developed the Cultivating Emotional Balance teacher training. And Paul Ekman had this, as a psychologist, also the same thing. He called it the emotional alert database, that we're carrying, I would say, baggage. We're carrying these deluded states of mind around, and then it meets an environmental factor that triggers that anger or irritation or so forth. And again, he was very interested how early can you shine the light of awareness on that, so that then you can intervene. So it's quite, and out of that came his daughter Eve Ekman, the whole work on Atlas of Emotions, looking at the whole, as the Buddha taught, all these, we talk about these main deluded states of mind. We talk about our ignorance, our anger or aversion, hatred, that spectrum, and our desire, attachment, and so forth. So we talk about those as the 3 root poisons, but then, you look under all of those and say, actually, under anger, we've got all these other, whole continuum from that slight irritation up to rage, and so forth. And so we get used to identifying different negative states of mind, and then we have to be able to identify them to even realize that they're disturbing us. So really, what's a negative state of mind is anything that disturbs our mental quiescence, our sense of peace, anything that disturbs that, because it's an extreme, so it can be, we can have things like love and compassion and so forth. But there used to be a book in the 70s that I read. Is it love or is it attachment? To distinguish, genuine love versus attachment. And so with attachment, if it becomes an obsession, it's attachment, right? I'm obsessed with, put in your own substance or person or place or whatever it is. And while we have that constant yearning, it's disturbing to our mind. But having genuine loving concern, having genuine compassion, these are healthy emotions. So we have to be able to distinguish that. Okay. So again, from Shanti Deva, whatever joy there is in this world all comes from desiring others to be happy. And we have to check that out for ourselves. As the Buddha said, don't take anything I said for granted. And Shanti Deva would have said exactly the same thing. Don't take, is it true that the only joy I've had has from wishing others to be happy? Is that what has been the source of my joy? Particularly, we're talking about lasting joy. Because you start to think about the joy of winning I don't know, an Olympic medal. So this is not lasting happiness, it's not true happiness. Is there joy there? Absolutely. Does it last? No. And whatever suffering there is in this world all comes from desiring myself to be happy, because it's focusing just on me, particularly when it's at the expense of others. As long as I'm happy, the world's a good place. That's a rather extreme example, but it's true. Just thinking what's going to make me happy. The wonderful house, the wonderful meal, the wonderful job. And the wonderful job starts to be less wonderful after a few weeks, maybe sooner. Okay, and so I think this is where so the next point in the mind training is so that first point was banish all blame onto the one, and then the next one is meditate on the great kindness of all beings. So last week we talked about different methods of how we meditate, the 7-point cause and effect from Arya Sangha, and then the equalizing, exchanging self with others, which is what we're looking at here. Again, I'll just go to Sage Shilbu's commentary. Okay, so meditating, so next one along, meditating on the great kindness of all beings. So this is the instruction for how to meditate on that from Sage Shilbu. Seated on a comfortable cushion, visualize your dear mother vividly in front. So here, of course, whether your mother's alive or dead, visualize the mother in front. First of all, we have to reflect on the kindness of the mother. People have maybe not so happy relationships with their mother of this life, or they put the blame onto the mother. I came home from university one time and my mother said, she had started studying child psychology because she'd been working in the preschool system for a long time. And she said, "You're not going to blame me, are you?" And I was like, I was just going to say hello, actually. Because she was feeling that guilt of, I followed, I don't know, Dr. Spock or whoever in the 50s, So here, so regardless of, how our mother treated us in this life, she didn't abort us. On the basis of having this body, we're able to, engage in the Dharma like we're doing now. We're able to look at, wanting to cultivate the positive qualities of mind. She's given us the basis for that, regardless of anything else. So the way we meditate, because my mother, first gave me this human existence of leisure and opportunity. So when it says leisure and opportunity, this is a reflection on appreciating this particular human life we have, and the fact that we're interested in the Dharma, the fact that there's access to the Dharma, that we're free of being born in other realms where we couldn't practice Dharma, like as an animal, you couldn't, let alone talking about other realms of existence and so forth. Because of that, of being born, I have encountered the Buddhist teaching, and so she's helped me like that, and then we reflect on all the stages in the womb and after birth, and the incomparable acts of kindness, however many acts of kindness from our mother. And then we think about, from beginningless time, I've had mothers, I've had countless lives, I had countless mothers, therefore these countless mothers, how they have helped me constantly, watched over me with eyes of love, and held me with affection and so forth, whether I was an animal, whether I was a human, whether I was a hell being, whether I was in God realms, whatever, wherever I've been, and protected me from harm, from dangers and so forth. We've just got to think of it. If you have children or your own parents, and you can think of all those examples of how you would protect, and how you have been protected, how you've been nurtured, and so forth. And so, as Chökyi says, reflect like that, meditate like that until tears come to your eyes. Okay? Tears fall from your eyes and the hairs on your skin stand up. So that they talk about bodhisattvas who are always like tears in their eyes and the hair standing up, because they're just overwhelmed with compassion. And then you think of the different sufferings of the mothers, the mother of this life and others. Just for me, she went through this, she went through that, and so forth. And reflect on the different types of suffering and thinking, I'll take those sufferings on myself. All the sufferings, the origin of that sufferings, all the afflictions, all her own anger, all her own selfishness, shall we say, and so forth, all exist within the mother, just like they exist within me. And so thinking of taking on like that. And then thinking, I want my mother to be happy. I want the mothers I've ever had to be happy. I want to repay their kindness. And they say we want to repay their kindness even when they haven't been our mother, so that we're dependent in this very life. We think about how many sentient beings we're dependent on, we wouldn't come to the end of it. The people in the shops, the people who package the things to go into the shops, the people who grew the food, cultivated the land, the insects who gave up their lives in that cultivation, animals who sacrificed their bodies so I could eat. And you just go on and on and on. You think there's no end of beings who contribute to my life, to my food, my clothing, housing, education, my very existence. And then you think, I want to complete their happiness. I want to repay that kindness, and unconditionally offering from our, offering our body, our wealth, all our virtues. So we're in our mind thinking, I offer you everything. You're not literally giving away all your wealth. You've got a family to look after, you've got responsibilities, you've got bills to pay, but it's wishing that they have all of that and more, great abundance. So we're giving that like freely from our heart. And in the Bodhisattva's way of life, it says, to accomplish the welfare of sentient beings, I shall turn my body into a wish-fulfilling jewel. So we have this in the verses of the four immeasurables. So just looking at the four immeasurables. So the immeasurable thoughts, or the four divine abodes, viharas. So immeasurable equanimity, we say how wonderful if all beings could abide in equanimity, free from the closeness of attachment and the distance of hatred, so that all could have an even regard towards all, not, categorizing people into, oh, they're my friends, so I have an attachment to them. I, want to hang around with them. They're my enemies. I don't want to have anything to do with them. I ignore them. I pretend that I don't see them in the street or so forth. And anger arises just at their names. And the the other ones we call strangers are people that we see and so forth. We probably end up becoming our friends. Like from when I first started, when I first moved here, and I go to Chemist Warehouse. This is not a sponsored advertisement, but I'd go to the chemist. And at first, the second time I went there, the woman made a comment, "Oh, you're back again." And then after that, she knows me by name because she takes all the scripts and she always addresses me by name. So I guess now in some way we're friends, we're familiar. But I have to say that interactions with people in shops is actually, well, it is becoming rarer these days. Mostly it's a self-checkout thing. But actually treating them as people, you know, like we don't know them. We might see them many times, but at least wishing them well, have a good day and all that, and actually meaning it, not, you know, have a good day. But really feeling that heart connection. And then they become our friends. So having that equanimous mind towards all, in the sense that none of them want to suffer and they, you know, want to be free of that. And so how wonderful it would be if they were free of all that closeness of attachment, in other grasping, desirous mind that is never satisfied, and distance of hatred, the mind of aversion. May they abide in equanimity is an aspirational prayer. I myself will cause them to abide in equanimity is I will do it. I will be the cause for that for them. So taking on that responsibility. And then please, Guru Deity, Buddha, Guru, bless me to be able to do this, because I can't quite do that yet. So please help me, please keep the teachings. So here we have this, Lama Zopa Rinpoche suggests this meditation on just what giving and taking, which is what the practice we're looking at here. Taking on all their disturbing emotions. We're not actually taking on others' disturbing emotions. I'm not taking on Putin's disturbing emotions. If I had the power to do that, Putin would have no disturbing emotions. Mm-hmm. Even the Buddha couldn't do that. He said, I cannot take away your sins, your afflictions, and so forth. I can't implant my realizations into your mental continuum, but I can show you how to do that. So we can think like that, that we, if we could, we would take on their disturbing emotions because we know it's like, and we don't want them to be suffering like that. And giving, and we say to give it to our self-cherishing thought. And the self-cherishing thought we can visualize as a hard, dark rock at our heart center that is cuts us off from others. We, you know, develop this hard heart. So we think about that being smashed to smithereens, so it softens, and then we're, you know, sort of soften our hearts, open our hearts to others. So this is one way that we visualize that. In the Tibetan text, it talks about visualizing all that negativity as like a clump of black hair. So context, the instruction was to monastics in Tibet. So Tibetans, black hair. And then you're cutting off your hair every, you know, quite often. And so the clumps, they were surrounded in these clumps of black hair. And it's saying, take as if you're giving it. It doesn't work for me because I guess I'm not Tibetan and I like this visualization, but the idea of like it's all of those black hairs are all the afflicted states of mind, all the delusions and so forth. And you're taking that on. So, I mean, just letting you know that's, so it's not like there's a fixed way of visualizing that, but that idea of cutting off the self-cherishing mind and, you know, sort of blasting that to smithereens. Sometimes they say it's like, I think Lama Yeshe said it's sort of blasting it like an atomic bomb, you know, that completely blasts the self-cherishing, so it's gone. We visualize like that. so Chulbu says, imagine therefore your body, wealth, and roots of virtue as precious, wish-fulfilling jewels. So this comes the loving kindness. Again, the original is how wonderful it would be. So this is the mind of loving kindness. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have happiness and its causes. So the conferences we had in Sydney were called Happiness and Its Causes, still are. Geshe Thubten said it could be called Suffering and Its Causes, but no one would come. So that's the first and second noble truth, happiness and its causes, third and fourth noble truth. So may they have happiness and its causes. I myself will cause them to have happiness and its causes. I will do it. I'll take that responsibility. And again, please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this, invoking the Buddha's power to bring those blessings so that I can do that. Lama Zopa Rinpoche changed that from happiness and its causes to Buddhahood. You know, may they achieve Buddhahood, because happiness and its causes, everyone thinks that, you know, cause of happiness is chocolate, or, you know, it's something mundane, whereas the power of it. So really, it's sort of like, let's cut the root of suffering existence altogether. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to achieve Buddhahood. May they achieve Buddhahood. I myself will cause them to achieve Buddhahood. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. So here, this visualization, transforming your body, wealth, and roots of virtue as precious, wish-fulfilling jewels. And, you know, generating these from your heart. And, you know, giving all the kind mother sentient beings all the conditions for engaging in the spiritual path. Geshe Doga, in one of his commentaries, talks about a commentary on the 8 verses of thought transformation. He says, you become the Dharma jewel. So it's transforming your body into a Dharma jewel. And if I think about that, if I'm transforming my body into a Dharma jewel, everything I think, do, and say has to be in accordance with the Buddha's instructions. So it sets a high bar, but giving them everything, all the conditions to them to attain their own Buddhahood, to attain enlightenment, to progress on the path. And think that, you know, because of this, your mother or all mother sentient beings actually achieve Buddhahood. So this is a meditation for giving aspect. And so we first cultivate loving kindness and compassion. Actually, when we see generally this practice of taking and giving, so Tonglen means giving and taking, but we practice the taking first, because we've got to take on the suffering before we can give all the, you know, benefits, all the happiness, everything that we visualize. And in Lama Zopa's instruction on meditating on loving kindness, he says, meditate, transforming your body into a wish-granting jewel gives every sentient being every kind of temporary and ultimate happiness they desire and need. And one of my Dharma friends said, everything they need, but what they think they need is, so we can think what they need is, you know, what we all need. You know, we need safety, we need protection, we need shelter, we need clothing, we need food. We can get very basic about that, but then you can also think, you know, like Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you know, cook up a storm for people, you know, sort of like give them a nice meal. Okay, now you've had your nice meal, the Dharma comes. Get comfortable, because that's, you know, of course, we have to have our temporal needs first before we can think about things like Dharma. If I remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I can't remember them all, but it's basically deal with the basics. And then you talk about self-actualization. then you talk about the spiritual path, when you've actually got your basic needs met. You've got to have a full tummy for that. Okay. Or at least not be starving. In this manner, first cultivate love and kindness and compassion, combining giving and taking, so that your heart becomes even more moist and ripe than before. So there's a quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to moisten your heart with compassion. And so again, in the For Immeasurables, it says, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and its causes. I myself will cause them to be free from suffering and its causes. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. And then Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, meditate on taking on yourself all the suffering and causes of suffering, karma and delusions of all sentient beings without exception. And so we go through every single realm of existence. We think about the suffering of those in the hell realms. Of course, for that, we need to know about those types of suffering and bring that to mind, how that would be like to be in those existences, or those in the hungry ghost realms, who never satiated, and they go walking towards water and all the water dries up and cracks in the earth and so forth. We can relate to that in the world today. And just thinking of that intense suffering, all those in the animal realm, which we can observe the many different forms of suffering in the animal realm. So the physical suffering, as well as the mental suffering of the fear of being killed and the mind of ignorance, and so forth. And then the human realm, we're very familiar with all the types of suffering, so we can think about all of those. God realms, I always think those living in the plush areas who never seem to suffer, they seem to be, everything's going well. And until they come crashing down. And then they've got absolutely no resources for how do you deal with that, because everything's been going smoothly. They haven't needed to seek out any sort of spiritual path, because they're cruising until, everything falls apart. Or in the case of the God realms in the traditional teaching, is that after 999 years of bliss, you have a premonition of your coming rebirth, because you've frittered away all your positive karma in just living the good life, and then you come crashing down to lower realms, and the premonition of that is so awful. Then there's great suffering. But I like to think about it that there's so many people in the world who've been high flyers and then lost everything, and that can be a wonderful turnaround for people, but it can also be disastrous. I think there's a famous hairdresser who set up a big business and lost everything, and he suicided, for example, because you've got no coping mechanism. So those things happen. People who have power, prestige, and lose it, and they think they're going to have it forever. And so with this one too, immeasurable compassion, you can also keep in mind, people that you hear about in the news, or, Ukrainian people, all the people involved in war and so forth. We can just really, the people or animals or so forth. So to make it not just some sort of global sense of, may all beings be free of suffering, but it's got to connect with the heart. It's got to connect with your own reality. Maybe someone who's going through a lot of suffering. So similarly with the practice of giving, we practice giving towards our family, our friends, and we extend out that, that heart of love. in the mind training, like the rays of the sun. It's okay, no, stay on that one. It says practice a combination of giving and taking, which we're looking at. Giving and taking should be practiced alternately, so we have these alternations, and you should begin by taking from yourself. So it said we should meditate on compassion, taking from sentient beings their suffering and causes of their suffering. Begin by taking upon yourself all your own actions and disturbing emotions and the sufferings you'll have to experience as a result in future lives in any of the realms of existence. And then this is where it says, imagine that these form black heaps similar to trimmings of hair upon your present mental and physical aggregates, and think that you are thereby freed from these suffering causes in all future lives. Imagine that you accept the sufferings and sources of suffering of tomorrow, the day after, the coming months and years, and the rest of your life, and so forth. And so I think Bonko Rinpoche also says that think about in the morning taking on the sufferings that you might experience later in the day, and then in the evening taking on the sufferings that you might experience the next day. Just thinking about that and cultivating the mind like that. It's also like in how to meditate. And Kathleen MacDonald, Venerable Sangye Kadro has a whole meditation on that, of starting with your own suffering and elaborately going through, or, you know, I mean, of course, we can choose our own forms of suffering. Not choose our own forms of suffering, but the sufferings that we're experiencing right now that we want to be free of. And then it can be very real that, say, you're having surgery or something and you think about that suffering in advance and taking on that suffering. And then, well, maybe while you're having surgery, you're out for the count, so you can't do it then. Afterwards, you know, the healing from that and using this practice to heal yourself from that. So we start with ourselves, and then we take on the sufferings going through each and every sentient being. And then with the giving, there's a whole ways in which we can do that. So we mentioned giving your body, possessions, and virtues in general. So, for example, in the Bodhisattva's way of life, during the intermediate eon of famine, may I become food and drink for sentient beings who are poor and famished. We can do that right now. It was another news thing this morning that more people homeless, food prices going up, people not being able to afford. And so there could be more scurvy and something else. So just thinking about that future suffering that we read about in the news and think, oh, may I take on that suffering and causes? May I protect those without protection, be a guide leading those upon the path, be a vessel, a bridge, a ship. So this is what a Buddha can do, just transform into any form that beings need. So we're creating our aspirations to be that. May I be an island for those searching for land, a lamp for those needing a light, a bed for those who need rest, and a servant for all who want assistance, and so forth. In this way, just as all realms of sentient beings are infinite like the expanse of the sky, may I become the basis for their sustenance until they attain the state beyond sorrow. And the instruction from Arya Asanga, bodhisattvas who have gone into solitude, in other words, in retreat, and have gathered their thoughts inwardly should purify their thoughts of selfishness, and from the bottom of their hearts with sincere faith should practice generosity out of their concern for all, imagining a limitless, huge and expansive variety of things, as well as providing sentient beings with actual gifts. This is the practice for bodhisattvas who are endowed with great intelligence. So then there's Nanka Powell talks about different ways of giving to those who are not engaged in the spiritual path, the ways we can give to those. Giving to those who harm us. So we're getting into harder territory. Offering to those who are engaged in the spiritual path. So here we talk about giving to our gurus and so forth, but to our Dharma brothers, sisters. Again, the Bodhisattva's way of life says, may sentient beings repeatedly make offerings to all the Buddhas. May they constantly possess the inconceivable bliss of the Buddhas. May bodhisattvas fulfill the welfare of sentient beings as they wish to do, and may all living beings receive all that the Buddhas have intended for them. Similarly, may the solitary Buddhas and the heroes enjoy peace, giving away our possessions, our virtues. So in the birth stories, it says, may all my actions, such as seeing, hearing, remembering, touching, or even conversing, be of benefit to beings, and may I always work to give them peace. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche has a similar motivation that he says that we should do every morning. At the beginning of each day, after you open your eyes, until enlightenment is achieved and until death, and especially today. So all the activities of your body, speech and mind, hearing, thinking, meditating, walking, sitting, sleeping, doing your job, and so on, do not become causes of suffering and become causes for happiness, especially for you to attain enlightenment. Transform them into a method for accomplishing benefit and happiness for all sentient beings. And my favorite one, just leave you with this, from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So this is as we wake up, setting our motivation for the day. Every day, think as you wake up, I have a precious human rebirth. I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use all my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart out to others, to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. I'm going to have kind thoughts towards others. I'm not going to get angry or think badly about others. I'm going to benefit others as much as I can. So it sounds like a tall order, but just setting that motivation every day and the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day to bring it into our mind. This is my intention. Of course, we probably won't live up to our ideal, but at least setting our attention and then resetting it throughout the day when we forget or when we're faced with difficulty, and keep, bringing those aspirations into our mind. Then they get stronger, and then the opposite get weaker. Okay, so we can leave it there for today. Time's come up. Any last questions, comments? Okay, so we can dedicate our prayers. That person didn't make it in. I don't know what happened.
No, I don't.
So page 17, the third verse down. Gewadi nyududa lama tsange drukune drowa chigamalupa deisala gopa shu chanchup sencho grimpoche makye panam ge kuchi ge panyampa me payan gongne gongdu kawa shu. A long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, page 19. We can say in English, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, To the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And then page 23, Long Life Prayer for Tenzin Oso. Lord of Dharma, who in accordance with the various dispositions of those to be subdued, makes clear in the light of your well-spoken advice the sacred Ganden tradition, essence of Buddha's teachings, O foremost and holy Lama, to you for our supreme, O Lama, please, please live long. And swift return prayer for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Has everyone got one? We turn to page 5. We can recite together in English. Fearless teacher, an assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Practica Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Thank you very much.